Let me now introduce a versatile speaker who is going to enlighten all of us this morning on the essentials of post-conflict resolution and India's concerns. He is none other than Sri Subramanian Swamy from India. Dr. Subramanian Swamy is the president of the Janata Party in India, and he is a distinguished academic. And after a successful teaching career as a professor in economics since year 1974, he has dedicated his life to public service and has been a member of parliament. This vociferous leader has been in the forefront to oppose the emergency declared by Srimati Indira Gandhi in June 1975 and has fought against the demolition of the Ram Setu and has filed number of court cases against corrupt politicians and corruption itself. His recent exposure was on the 2G scam. Dr. Swamy is a graduate of prestigious Harvard University, where he earned his doctorate in economics. He has served as an associate professor at Harvard and as professor of economics in Indian Institute of Technology. He has also served as a visiting professor in many universities, both home and abroad. Dr. Swamy has served as an assistant economic affairs officer in United Nations Secretariat before entering politics of his country. While serving as a member of parliament, he has also served as a member of the governing body of Indian Institute of Technology, member of Control of Capital Issues Committee, member of Court of Benares Hindu University, and he is also a member of Council of IHT of the Government of India. Dr. Subramanian Swamy has served as Cabinet Minister of Commerce, Law and Justice, and as Chairman of the Commission of Labour Standards and International Trade of the Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the author of many books and journal articles, and sir, I'm sorry I'm unable to read all that. The number exceeds 200 very well. And let me now leave the podium, allowing you the good fortune of listening to Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Over to you, sir.
The convener of this conference, the commander of the Sri Lankan Army, the Secretary of Defense, foreign delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to speak as an Indian, but as an Indian very sympathetic to the cause to which the present government of Sri Lanka is committed. When I was coming, there was in the Delhi airport, there was a poster of the Ministry of Environment in which it said, "Beware, the tiger is becoming extinct." Well, I said, I'm going to a country where it's already extinct. I must say that the victory of the government of Sri Lanka over the terrorist organization called the LTTE is a historic landmark in the history of the world, because it was a decisive victory. There have been terrorism in other parts of the world where compromises have been made. Yet governments after governments have committed themselves to what they call as zero tolerance for terrorism. But Sri Lanka, ultimately made the sacrifice to bring it to an end. And as a consequence, we in India, I would say most Indians, if not all Indians, most Indians are pleased with this development, grateful to the government of Sri Lanka, because for us also, the LTT was a problem. One of our former prime ministers, in his young age, in his 40s, was assassinated by the LTT. And the LTT had carried on many illegal activities in India, such as drug peddling, gun running, and sometimes functioning as contract killers in the state of Tamil Nadu. So for us also, the end of LTT was a great turning point. India assisted in the war, and I think that India will continue to assist more and more in whatever way the government of Sri Lanka wants. This conference is in fact extraordinary. It's probably one of the best organized conferences I've ever attended in my life, and I've attended many. And to see such participation, it's extraordinary. I would like to concentrate on the question of reconciliation. But I would like to say that let not this victory over terrorism be diluted by the media circulation of wild accusations of genocide and gross human rights excesses. I would say that experience, and I've studied the cases of many countries. I've in fact written a book on how to deter terrorism. In the experience of many countries which fight internal insurgency, not external wars. Of course, wars between two countries are regulated by the Geneva Convention. But when you fight an insurgency within your country, then there is a lot of collateral damage that takes place. And that collateral damage includes innocent people being killed. That doesn't mean that the violation of the human rights that is implicit in innocent people being killed is a state-sponsored one. We face this in India every day, this criticism of what is happening in Kashmir, or what's happening in Nagaland or Manipur. If you want to protect the integrity of our country and the insurgency is domestic and it intermingles with the local population, I think it is inevitable that you will see some civilian destruction or killings. Even in World War II, the city of Dresden in Germany was destroyed completely by Britain, even though it was not a place where there was a military concentration. But it was to break the morale of the German nation. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where only civilians were killed, was again to bring the war to an end. And in the Nuremberg trials, it's very explicitly recognized where such collateral damage takes place that the Commission cannot take notice of. So I would like the world in general not to dilute this great victory which the government of Sri Lanka achieved, a victory which not only is for their own country, but which has implications for fighting terrorism in general. I am here to raise the questions of prerequisites or essential elements of reconciliation. The first essential component of reconciliation has to be necessarily that the Tamils of Sri Lanka must vocalize what they feel in their hearts and what they tell me in private, because I am also a Tamil. Of course, the pro-LTT Tamils don't recognize me as Tamil, but that doesn't matter. I don't recognize them as humans. But the fact of the matter is that Tamils after Tamils tell me that they now are happy that their children are not going to be forcibly recruited by the LTT, that they can go to school and colleges, that their money is, that their paycheck is not sliced by extortion, that there's no uncertainty. There are, of course, they are not fully satisfied. They want certain expressions. They want to feel that they will not be marginalized in society, because there has been a portrayal, and partly mostly by the LTT spokesman and their apologists, that this is a war between Sinhalas and the Tamils, and the Tamils lost. So there is a concern on the question of marginalization. But nevertheless, they all acknowledge that it's a breath of fresh air that they are now breathing. And they want this to continue. They don't want this fighting to resume. The fighting itself came, the militancy itself came because there were agreements between the Tamil leaders and the Sinhalese leaders, and these were not kept. Whatever reason, they were broken after they were signed. There is a background to all this, which we must recognize. When the British came to the island, as the British were prone to do wherever they went, they cultivated the minority and targeted the majority. They did that in India, they did that in many other countries. It was a very effective way to rule. The minorities were grateful, short-sightedly grateful, and the Tamils benefited by their collaboration with the British. And as a consequence, by 1948, when Sri Lanka got independence, the Tamils had a huge disproportionate share in the services, in universities, and so on. Democracy in Sri Lanka led to the majority getting power, and since it was a unitary state, Sinhalese got almost 100% of the power. And they went about correcting this imbalance. In the process of correcting this imbalance, they went overboard. And this led to anxiety, and finally the Tamil leadership entered into negotiations. These negotiations ended up in failure because they signed the agreement and then it was gone back on. As a consequence, a new young breed of boys began portraying these leaders as softies, as Uncle Toms, as betrayers. And out of that came militancy. And finally, in India, when Mr. Jayawardena was the president here, Ms. Indira Gandhi was the prime minister, their chemistry was never very good. And she thought that this is an opportunity to take revenge. In fact, she had even alleged that Jayawardena was elected president because the CIA helped him. Well, of course, the Soviet Union helped her. That didn't matter. So, therefore, she launched on a program of training these militant forces. But the LTT wanted to be the sole representatives of Tamils. And they decimated everybody else. They decimated anyone who was not under their control, even if they're not hostile. There was a Harvard Law graduate here called Neelam Tiruchelvam, who used to plead with me whenever I used to go back to teach briefly at Harvard. He was a student at that time. It was a law school. He used to plead with me, don't be so harsh on the LTT. We have nothing else. But even he was killed by the LTT because he refused to become a member. Same with Amrita Lingam, who started the whole movement for Elam in the 70s. He too was killed. The mayor of the Yogeshwaran was a member of parliament. He was killed. His wife, who became a mayor, she was killed. In fact, the entire democratic leadership of the Tamils was destroyed by the LTT. And it is in that vacuum that this terrorism grew. It became it spread all over the world. I was talking to their arms procurer and financier, who is now in the custody of the Sri Lankan government. And he told me that weapons came freely from North Korea. Well, this is the first time I've heard this admission being made. But they got weapons, and they, of course, this is an ancient culture here, both Tamils and Sinhalese. They were able to make aeroplanes, they were able to make submarines. They were on the way to making a submarine. And if they had succeeded, as the Norwegians wanted, and thank God Rajapaksa didn't listen to them, they would have been a threat to all the nations in the neighborhood, and particularly India, where there is a Tamil population. So I'm saying that first and foremost of all, the essential has to be that the Tamils have to recognize and own up this victory as theirs. And the Sinhalese should also be able to co-opt them in this victory. I don't want this victory to be diluted by any other consideration. I oppose the resolution of the UNHCR India very vehemently, appeared on television denouncing the government. I know that the Prime Minister, left to himself, would not have supported this resolution. But our Prime Minister is in an extraordinary position where he is not the final authority in making decisions, and consequently he had to go along. The United States, for some other obscure reason, decided to pursue this resolution, although the United States internationally was the country which made LTT into a recognized terrorist force. First country outside India which banned the LTT was the United States. And the United States then went after other countries to do the same. They went after Canada, European Union, and LTT became one of the most banned terrorist organizations in the world thanks to the United States. But I don't know what happened. Sometimes the lapses do take place, and I hope the United States will reconsider not to go on this path, because this is something which is, there's no end to it if you once start this kind of resolutions. So I would say the first essential would be that this is something that the Tamil community must recognize. And I say this because I'm extraordinarily disappointed that those who were screaming the most about Sri Lankan army committing excesses, genocide, killing innocent people, shooting them, when the elections came and the president, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, stood again, the Tamils couldn't find anyone else but the commander-in-chief of the Sri Lankan army to be their candidate to fight against the atrocities